Bridge family. Did you know that March is Women's History Month? This is the time that we set aside to recognize and celebrate the many wonderful and amazing contributions that women have had to our society. Today, I want to read to you a book about some of these women. This book is called Bold and Brave: The Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote. That's right, women didn't always have the right to vote in our country. At one time, that was reserved for men only. But the women in this book decided that they wanted to have a voice. And because of their hard work and perseverance, women today have that same right to vote as men do. I won't read you the whole book today because it could be rather long, but I would like you to listen to the 5 women that I choose to read today. Think about each of these women as I read to you about them. Think which one you would like most to meet and why. Talk about the great contributions of these women with a parent or a brother or sister or someone who's in your household. Take the time to really think about how these women have changed the way we live today. I hope you enjoy the book. Bold and Brave: 10 Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote, written by Kirsten Gillibrand. When I was a little girl, after church on Sundays, I would visit my great-grandmother, Mimi. She told me about a time when women like her left their homes and worked in factories, making equipment to help American soldiers win the war. Mimi taught me to be bold and to believe there was nothing I couldn't do. Mimi's oldest daughter was my grandmother, Polly. She liked to roller skate down the long marble hallways of the New York State Capitol where she worked. When I was about 10, Grandma took me to a big room where ladies stuffed envelopes with letters urging people to vote. I thought, I want to be just like them someday. Grandma taught me to fight for what I believe in. Grandma's oldest daughter was my mom, Penny. She always did what she set her mind to. She was a sports writer for her student newspaper, even though girls were not allowed in the press boxes. She went on to law school and was one of only 3 women in her class. As a mom, she also earned her black belt in karate, something few women at the time aspired to. My mother taught me you need to be brave to forge a new path. Who taught my mom and her mom and her mom to be bold and brave so they could teach me and you? I can tell you who. The women who came before them. Women who faced unimaginable challenges. When my grandmother was born, women didn't have the right to vote. That meant they didn't have the power to elect the people who establish our country's rules and laws. Less than a century later, I became a United States Senator, which means I helped make those laws. Here are 10 women who paved the way. They were called suffragists, not because they suffered, although they most certainly did, but because suffrage means the right to vote. They fought so women could be heard. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, 1815 to 1902, Dare to be Different. In 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton was a young mother when she and her friends decided to hold a big meeting about women's rights. They believed something uncommon at the time, that all men and women are created equal, and wanted laws to guarantee it. They especially wanted the right to vote. The 300 women and men who attended this convention near Elizabeth's home in Seneca Falls, New York, became some of the earliest American suffragists. People made fun of the suffragists, but Elizabeth didn't let that stop her. She was fearless. As a young girl, she rode horses, learned Greek, and played chess, all of which were typically just for boys. She once said, "The best protection any woman can have is courage." This first convention in July 1848 was only the beginning of her 50-year effort to win voting rights for women. But she was not alone in her journey. Susan B. Anthony, 1820 to 1906. Never give up. Susan B. Anthony was an abolitionist, which means she opposed slavery. Elizabeth Cady Stanton convinced Susan to fight for women's voting rights too. Together they were a team. Some people said that Elizabeth forged the thunderbolts and Susan fired them. Susan traveled the country by train and horse-drawn coach to rally support for voting rights for women, often wearing her favorite red silk shawl. She wrote home, "We speak in schoolhouses, barns, sawmills, log cabins with boards for seats and lanterns hung around for lights, but people come 20 miles to hear us. Today, 20 miles may not seem far, but before cars, it could take all day or longer to travel that distance." In 1872, Susan tried to vote for president and was arrested. She spoke out for years and years until she died, almost 15 years before women won that right. Others carried the torch, and the amendment that finally granted women the right to vote, the 19th Amendment, is also called the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. Sojourner Truth, 1797 to 1883. Speak the truth. Sojourner Truth's given name was Isabella Bonefree. She was born into slavery in Ulster County, New York. She left her owner in 1826, the year before enslaved people were freed in her state. Years later, she changed her name. Sojourner means someone who travels from place to place, and truth was at the center of her faith. She once said, "I will shake every place I go to," and she did exactly that. Sojourner was one of the first African American women to successfully stand up for herself in court. Her young son was still enslaved, and she sued to free him and won. Sojourner fought to end slavery and traveled the country pressing for equality for all. She worked with some of the most important thinkers of the day, such as abolitionist Frederick Douglass and President Abraham Lincoln. In 1851, she spoke at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio, and in 1867 at the American Equal Rights Association meeting in New York. Sojourner asserted that all people deserved the right to vote, no matter the color of their skin or if they were male or female. Sojourner lived to bring justice to others, proclaiming that the truth is powerful and will prevail. Harriet Tubman, 1822 to 1913. Be strong and courageous. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery in Dorchester County, Maryland, and had a very hard life. But her faith in her family taught her that she was special, strong, and brave. In 1849, Harriet escaped from slavery, then spent years helping her family and others escape. She wrote a letter to a friend explaining why. "I have heard their groans and sighs and seen their tears, and I would give every drop of blood in my veins to free them." She was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a network of those who helped bring enslaved people to freedom. She ran toward danger, not away from it. Harriet was so courageous and so certain about what to do that people often called her General Tubman. During the Civil War, Harriet served as a nurse, an armed scout, and a spy. After the war, she turned her efforts to gaining suffrage for all women and was especially interested in the rights of African American women. In 1898, Harriet gave speeches for women's rights in New York City, Boston, and Washington, D.C. She continued to help people throughout her life. Today, designers at the U.S. Mint, which makes our money, are considering a new $20 bill bearing her image to honor her bravery and conviction. Kavita Adar, 1885 to 1946. Fight for fairness. Kavita Adar was born in Laredo, Texas. Her father published a Spanish-language newspaper. Like him, Kavita loved to read and write and to speak out. She became a teacher, a civil rights activist, a journalist, and, just like her dad, a newspaper publisher. She focused on the violence against and mistreatment of Mexican Americans and the importance of women's rights, including the right to vote. In her first teaching job, Jovita found herself without books, pencils, or paper for the children. Many had no food, and sometimes the school had no heat in the winter. Jovita vowed to change that, and she did. In 1911, she helped found and become the first president of the League of Mexican Women, which focused on education and women's rights. She later started a free kindergarten, which provided school supplies, food, and clothing for the children. Jovita believed education was vital. Educate a woman, and you educate a family, to make sure that women got the right to vote. What does determined mean? Why don't you look that up while you're at home in the next day or two and see what things you're determined to do or determined to be? Think also about the 5 women that we read about today. Which one would you like to meet the most and why? What was it about that person that inspires you or makes you curious about why she did what she did? Talk about these things with an amazing woman in your life. Do you have a current hero that is a woman? What has that woman done for you or for your family or maybe even for your community or the world? Talk about this special woman with someone that you're close to. If you would like to finish reading Bold and Brave, 10 Heroes Who Won Women the Right to Vote, check it out in your local library. The author's name is Kirsten Gillibrand.